Hello, this one is a bit less focused. So generally what I do with these retrospectives is kind of write a script and get my audio together, edit the video and all that stuff. But today that's not happening. This is a bit of a different one. Basically, I'm just playing some Super Mario Bros. Worthless speedrun video, and I'm just gonna talk essentially about what this game kind of meant for me as a person. So depending on which parents you ask, Super Mario Bros. Or Sonic 1 on the Master System is the first video game I ever played, essentially. I grew up in England. As such, the Master System was a lot more popular than the NES, which was kind of getting trounced by microcomputers and the Master System. But when I was very young, my dad had a friend called Ian, and we used to go around his house quite regularly. He was my dad's sister's husband, I believe. And we went around there a lot. There wasn't much to do. My dad was the most classic British, drinking alcohol and hanging out with people kind of person you've ever met. So I used to kind of hang around with my brother and my sister at this place. The difference between this place and everywhere else is that this place had an NES. So Ian had a Nintendo. For what reason, I don't really know. But we were really, really glad he did, because he had some amazing games. He had, and some not so great games, but he had some really awesome games. He had Super Mario Bros. 1, Super Mario Bros. 2, Super Mario Bros. 3, and he also had a couple of other games like A Boy and His Blob and Airwolf, which is an odd choice, but you took what you could get back then. But it was the Mario games that really got us addicted. Obviously, I was born in 91, so I was born years after the Nintendo had been released, and by that point, I believe just about every Mario game for the NES had been released in Europe, if not just the first or second. Maybe the third came out the same year I was born. So by the time I was about 3, this would have been about then, we were just playing each one on its own merits, not really knowing how much time had gone in between the other. So it was this really... It's hard to really explain how much this affected me. It's, a lot of people back in, older days than me, at least, when they were growing up in the 70s or 60s, they would, they would talk about these movies and the fascination with movies they had and the effects of, King Kong or all that kind of stuff. And for me, video games was that. It was my generation's version of that. Now, remember, by the time I was playing this when I was about 3, the NES was done. Really, let's see, I was 3, so it was about 94. The Super Nintendo would have been out. It would have been out for a couple of years now. And anyone that was into video games was probably playing that, or the Sega Mega Drive, which is the Genesis in the US. England was Sega country, so most people I knew had a Mega Drive or a Master System. I really want to sneeze. There we go. See, that's what you get when the audio isn't edited. So yeah, a lot of people were playing Super Nintendo. Most people weren't really playing the NES. the NES had too much going against it. It was terribly marketed. It by that point, the Super Nintendo was obviously out, and it had a lot more fanfare behind it than the NES. Definitely in Europe. But more so than that, Sega was just massacring the NES in Europe. So I feel very privileged to have been able to grow up with the NES. I knew one kid with an NES, and all he had was Dr. Mario. And I did not like that game when I was a kid. In fact, I didn't like that game until about a year ago. But it had Mario, and that was pretty exciting to me. Another big part of what was so exciting to me as a kid was that Mario wasn't just video games. There were the Super Show and Super Mario 3 and Super Mario World on TV, Captain and the Game Master, all that kind of stuff. It was, just about everything. It was a pretty cool time to live in because it was a franchise. It was it was pretty amazing. So we would play these games every now and then. We would switch it up, play. Oh, another game I forgot to mention was Ian Wiley had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was a huge. I mean, for as big as an NES game could be in the UK, a huge game, probably the biggest game, to be honest with you. So Mario. Mario's that's a tough one to talk. See, this is why I did this type of video, and I don't think I will ever do this again. I much prefer doing a scripted, edited video. But this one, I did this with because I feel like, roughly 20 minutes gives me enough to talk about my childhood and how this affected me. But it also, when nothing more can be said about a game, you may as well just kind of tangent about your own experience with that game, And Mario 1 is the ultimate game where you just, you can't say anything new. Everybody knows what this is. So, let's see. It just permeated my life. This and the Master System completely changed the direction of what I wanted to do. It's the reason I do these videos. It's the reason I still play video games. It's I went to college for music, but if I didn't go for music, you better believe it was going to be animation or video games. It essentially gave me a foot in the door when it comes to media. And that clearly has affected my life more than maybe anything, really. So I continued playing Mario through my life. The Super Nintendo was a lot more popular than the NES, so it was a lot easier to get a hold of. So by the time I was 6, 7, I imagine I had a Super Nintendo. I was probably playing these games on the SNES. But the honest truth is, there was something missing. There isn't, the Super Nintendo version to me doesn't quite feel as good as those original games. It feels well programmed, but not quite as well tuned for what it's trying to be. So the NES will always stick with me. There are so many very early memories. Some of my earliest memories are NES memories, for sure. I remember one memory is we had an NES that the power button wouldn't stay down. So essentially what we had to do was put a 10-piece coin into the slot of the power button so that it would stay down. I certainly remember playing Mario at Ian Wiley's a lot and never being good at it, not until I was much, much older. But at 4 years old, I certainly knew I was better than a lot of people that had just started playing the game. Definitely. Mario is, it still just affects me, and I guess that's why I'm making this video and just giving myself time to breathe and talk about this. Mario permeates everything. I'm not sure if this or Sonic 1 for the Master System is more important to me, and at some point I will do a retrospective for Sonic 1 on the Master System, and it will most likely be a video like this. And I realize now I've bullshitted you because I said that I would never make another video like this, but for Sonic 1, that's probably going to be the case. But, me and my brother, me and my sister, we all have very, very fond memories of playing this, and not just playing it with them, but playing it with my dad, who, my dad was a very cool guy, a very nice man, and he definitely should have saw the writing on the wall, but he definitely had a big alcohol issue, almost throughout my life, really. And at that point, I guess it wasn't as bad as it would become. But my dad being the person who gave us a Nintendo and played Super Mario Bros. With us and all this kind of stuff, it built lasting connections. And a couple of years before he passed away, for Christmas I got him an NES in the box, and we sat there for the night and just played through it. It's a bittersweet memory because he was just completely plastered, and that is pretty much the way it would go until his death. But it was a nice kind of recollection of old days, and a night that will stick in my mind almost definitely. Some more, I guess, an interesting tidbit that some Americans and Canadians and other people may not know is that in the PAL format, in the European format for NES games, the games played slower. They played I think it's something like 17% slower. And the reason for that is just the way that TVs were made. In Europe was made for 50 hertz, whereas in the US and Japan, it was made for 60. Well, the US, Canada, Japan, I believe. And I guess a cool little inside information thing about Super Mario Bros. For the NES in Europe is that it actually plays faster than the 60 hertz version, which is pretty cool that Nintendo, even that early on, tried to correct the speed for this region. It's a pretty cool thing. This, of course, means that if you play a European Super Mario Bros. On a US console, it plays insanely fast. It's actually quite funny. But yeah, there you go. There's some information on that one. As years have gone on, I've gone on to collect air quotes NES games and video games and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, in my mid-20s, I kind of started, the track started derailing on that. I'm not really a big fan of having a lot of stuff around. I'm quite a minimal person. These days, I just have a Switch and Nintendo Online, so I'm just playing some NES games. But back then, yeah, definitely, I had a bunch of NES games. Another thing I find quite interesting about people when they talk about NES and all this kind of stuff growing up is that they played so many of these games, whereas for me, I played like 7 NES games in total, and that was it. I just didn't have access or money, or I do not understand how these people ended up with 15 games. It was pretty crazy. Ian Wiley may have had maybe 7 games, but us as kids with an NES in the house, it was more like 4. Maybe it was the Mario games and A Boy and His Blob or something like that. So I guess we're 3/4 of the way through. Maybe we're starting to wrap up, but I, I can't pretend like there's not a strong correlation between the NES Mario and my kind of memories of my father who died when I was 27 from liver failure. He was the guy that got me into this. He got me and my brother into this. He got my sister into this. He was the reason, and he may not have realized it at the time, but it was a huge shift in how I perceived media and perceived where I wanted my life to go. Really, I know it sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, those movie Bob memes or whatever. But no, I mean, I'm a perfectly balanced human. I have depression like a lot of people do, but I work a full-time job and I have a girlfriend and I have my own, own house, all this kind of stuff. But it, as movie bobbish as it sounds, Mario means a lot more to me than you may imagine. To be honest, it means a lot more than you could imagine. It's the reason I collected those games. It's the reason I make these videos. It's the reason I followed Jeff Gerstmann and GameSpot in the early, I say early days, but early days for me. I was very young at the time. It's the reason I knew Giant Bomb when it was a blog post kind of site before they upgraded to version 1.0. It's the reason I went to Eurogamer Expo and as press and got to go to those things, and the reason I wrote reviews on websites and I got paid to do it, and these aren't me trying to gloat or anything. It's just to explain to you what this has meant to me as a person. Every time I see that cart and I see the NES and think, oh shit, I got blowing this thing again. That's as frustrating as that was. That's a happy memory for me. So I guess we'll leave on a tiny little story, a dumb story from childhood. I remember I went to hospital when I was young. I won't say why, but it was quite. I want to say traumatic, but it was an important surgery that needed to be done, and I remember it was either after I'd had surgery or just before, but I was in the essentially what would be the kids' room, waiting for surgery, and they had some toys and all that kind of stuff, and I realized that they actually had a TV on the wall, and they had hooked up an NES to it, which was pretty crazy because England was not an NES country. It was predominantly Master System or Mega Drive or that kind of stuff. And so me and this kid were playing Super Mario Bros. Where I believe it was Super Mario 1. And this me realizing this, me being the sly kid, I decided to say to the other kid, "All right, I'll be Mario and you be Luigi," because I knew that then I could play the first person, as opposed to having to wait for this kid to die. And my dad kind of put me back in my paces and was like, "Yeah, you ain't doing that. He's being Mario." It's pretty funny. But anyway, we're at the end. So thank you for listening to this, unscripted mess of a fucking video. I hope that you enjoyed. And, Mario will always mean something to me. But with the amount of videos that have been made on the subject, I just feel like this was the easiest and perhaps the most organic thing to do. Yeah, absolutely. Expect in a lifetime, expect in my lifetime, for me to continue on the retrospective with Super Mario Bros. 2, followed by Super Mario Bros. 2 USA. Have a good one, and I will see you next time. Peace.